So, yeah, I'm so excited. This is my first time joining you all, and it's always so fun to see all the fun things that everyone does in the UK, and I feel a little bit like I'm in a bubble. So it's nice to broaden the bubble. So thank you for that. And yeah, so I just want to share with you a little bit. Sort of how I use clay in buildings. And just to give you a background, so I'm a designer. I exclusively design natural buildings. To me, that means using materials that are locally available, harvested without harm, and then using them in a way to create energy efficient buildings because we understand the materials and we understand the climate. And if you can understand those two things, then you can use your materials appropriately and ensure that, I keep hitting the wrong thing, ensure that what you build makes sense for where you build it. And then I also teach natural building workshops to bridge that gap in knowledge, because I found it's difficult to just write clay wall on a set of plans and expect anything normal to happen. So I teach in order to ensure that the concept is built correctly, mostly, but also because it's fun and empowering and I get to play. And so just what I want to posit to you is this question of, what if there was a paradigm shift? And I feel like you're all in on this paradigm shift, but what if we could broaden it to everyone, right? What if what was normal was that we built homes, buildings, everything that was energy efficient and comfortable just because of how it's conceived, and uses materials that are just from you in nature, right? And again, understanding those materials lets you use them in a way that is beneficial. And then because of that material choice that you made, because you brought these materials in from nature, nature's not there to harm us. Maybe a lion being an exception, but materials from nature are inherently also natural and non-toxic for the most part. And so the space you're creating is natural. And clay to me is sort of the linchpin of natural building, right? Because what you can do with it is so diverse. So I just want to talk about three aspects of clay in the way that I use the material in design and construction and empowering workshop participants and clients specifically to build their own homes. And so the first is that heavy materials, clay among them, are a category of materials that are called thermal mass. And thermal mass you can think of as battery storage. So in the same way that we think of electricity batteries, you plug it in, energy goes in, you charge the battery, you unplug it, and now you have that energy to use, and it trickles out over time whenever there's a demand. The same is true for a thermal battery, but the input and the output are heat. So that means you can charge, right? We're charging our mass with some heat input. Like in this photo, this is a masonry heater, right? It burns super hot, super efficient. The mass stores the heat energy from the fire and then releases it slowly over time. And so this is a way of using this thermal battery to create radiant energy inside your space. So in this case, you're charging the battery by creating a fire. You can also charge that battery with the sun. So again, thermal mass is a battery storage. When you let the sun be your charging, like your plug-in. That's part of what's called passive solar design. And it's literally placement of a clay wall in proximity to glass. So in this photo, the glass is on the right-hand side, the clay wall is on the left-hand side. And we've calculated the angle of the sun in winter when you want to plug in your battery for heat with the sun. We've calculated those angles so that in this case, because of the separation between the glass and the clay, just over 2/3 of that clay wall gets warmed by the sun in winter. That is free heat. At nighttime, the sun goes away, that mass is still warm, and it's releasing that heat energy into the space. And it's just because you chose clay to build that wall, right? And it's free. And in summertime, when it's warm out, that same clay wall is in shade. And so that means it's cooling your space, right? So the same wall works as a heat storage for winter when you're trying to stay warm. And it also works to absorb excess heat in summer when you're trying to be cool, right? So this is, right, and this is sort of a larger photo of it. It can also be sculptural, right? You can play, it doesn't have to just be a wall. And so this is then a whole nother layer. We'll get to that. But when you choose clay, it's inherently malleable. And so you get to do all these other fun things with it. You could also charge your clay with hot water heat. And that could be in a wall, it could be in your floor. So this is an example of an earthen floor made with clay. This one is poured. It's about 4 inches thick, so that's 10 centimeters thick. And it has tubing about 1/3 of the way down is where the tubing sits. And so it delivers about the same temperature water as the hot water that comes out of your domestic hot water for hand washing. So it's a lower temperature than, say, a radiator delivers. And so with a low temperature hot water, you can, again, warm a whole surface, right? And when you experience heat from a thermal mass, it is radiant energy, and radiant energy makes your body feel warm when you're in proximity. So instead of heating the air, and then the air has to make you feel warm, the radiant energy is a direct line of heat into your body, right? It's the same way that you can feel warm when you're outside on a cool day. If the sun is shining on you, it feels warm. If a cloud comes over the sun, same air temperature, but the cloud comes in front of the sun and you don't feel warm anymore. That's radiant energy, right? The sun is our beautiful radiant energy. Let me see if it was. Yeah, so this is ways of using clay, right? So lots of mass inside a well-insulated bubble. So you want to still insulate the roof, insulate the walls. And then if you have inside those walls, you have thick plasters, you have clay floors, you have clay walls, you might have other clay elements. All of that mass inside the insulated bubble helps to moderate the temperature swings inside the space, and it allows you to have radiant energy because of that thermal battery, which is more comfortable. So you're increasing comfort as well as energy efficiency. And again, you can also use the same exact mass, keeps you warm in winter, and it keeps you cool in summer. Same mass. So the second property of clay, and this might be my favorite because it's not as intuitive, is that clay is hygroscopic. And what that means is when there is an excess of humidity in the air, in the space around the clay absorbs the humidity into it. It's never getting wet, it's never remalleable. It's just absorbing excess humidity. And then if the space is dry, it releases that humidity. So it's almost like a lung where it's pulling in humidity and releasing the humidity. And this can improve health and comfort. So I'll talk about comfort first. When you experience the comfort of a space, it's not just temperature. It's a relationship between temperature and humidity. So at the exact same temperature, you could be hot or cool, depending on if it's humid, you would feel hot. If it's not humid, you might feel cool or comfortable. So the amount of humidity in the space means how much can I sweat? And if it's really humid, your sweat mechanism is not as effective. And so your body gets warmer. So if you can regulate that humidity to sort of an average normal, the comfort that you experience inside the space is improved. And the second is from a health standpoint. If you have a surface material that absorbs humidity instead of condensing humidity. So the example to me is when you take a shower and you get out of the shower and it's all steamy in the bathroom, and you look at the mirror and you can't see in the mirror because the mirror is a cold surface. And so all of the humidity from that shower condensed on the mirror, and it's foggy. Unless you have clay in that bathroom. And if you have clay in that bathroom, you get out of that steamy shower, the clay has absorbed the excess humidity from that shower, and you can see into the mirror. And what that means, besides, that sort of cool little magic trick, what it means is that you don't have surfaces that can have liquid water buildup. So you don't increase moisture content beyond 18% ever. When you do increase moisture content above 18%, mold grows and rotting begins. And so clay can be used to improve the durability of materials because it's keeping them from rotting, but it also eliminates the ability for mold to grow. And I don't know about the UK or the EU, but in the US, it is the single biggest litigated issue in homes is brand new homes that are moldy, because there is condensation of just normal life, the humidity of normal life, cooking and bathing and humid air outside, condensing and collecting inside of a wall system and creating an environment where mold can grow. Well, if you have clay, that can't happen, right? So this is like, from a health standpoint, you've just eliminated a big toxin in your life. You also have, because clay has this sort of breathability, vapor permeability, it can pull toxins. The toxins bond to humidity in the air and pull into the clay, and the clay will lock them in. So it can actually literally clean your air like a little filter to a degree, right? So you've chosen to put clay plaster on a wall, clay on your floor. And that clay it's not just the finish. It's not just the beautiful thing you're looking at or touching every day or whatever. It's your comfort mechanism, and it's your, it's like literally improving the health of your space, right? Just because that one choice. This is the magic to me, right? And so you end up creating these spaces that you step into them and they just feel good. And it's because they're healthy for you and your body knows it, right? And the third element, and this is maybe where the fun takes off, is that because clay is this, like, it's a sticky platelet, and when you add water to that sticky platelet, The platelets slide on each other, and now it's malleable, right? That means if you pick up clay, I have yet to have a person that I hand a handful of clay and they don't just start making something. No, everybody, that's intuitive, right? So you have this material that you are building with that begs you to play with it. Well, now we're gonna have some fun, right? Because now you can add, okay, I'm plastering my wall. Well, what if I want to make it fun? Or in this case, I'm literally build a sink out of clay, right? So kind of sky is the limit in terms of what you make. And they could be functional elements. So this is an example. We had this staircase. It's straw bale on the outside with a clay plaster, nice thick clay plaster finish. And on the interior, so on the right-hand side of the photo, it's a cob wall. And the stairs are supported in between. And because the cob wall is so sculpted, we were having a really, really hard time figuring out how to attach a railing to it that was at the right height for building codes and all of these things. And we were talking to the building inspector, and he said, well, you used clay for everything else. Why aren't you making a clay railing? This is from the building inspector. This is the guy who's supposed to make sure we do everything right. And he's so on board from inspecting the house that he's like, well, obviously we can make everything out of clay. So that's what we did, right? And so I used 2 molds. I used one to create the railing, and it was just like a semicircle so that I could line the mold up and create a perfect extrusion all the way up the railing. And then I had a second mold for the inside where your fingers curl over the railing, right? And so that made it uniform all the way up. So you can sculpt functional elements, right? This is a stepping back from that same railing. I've done several of them. They're really fun. And then you can play with the end of the railing. You could sculpt a mirror into your wall. I didn't do this one. This was done by a woman named Joelle Hunsberry. It takes my breath away, right? Because it could just be a mirror on your wall. Or you can play with clay, right? And the clay asked you to, so please listen, right? This is the sink example. So on the left, it's just cob. It's just clay, sand, straw. I sculpted it way too big and then formed it down to get the shape, exactly the shape I wanted after it was sort of leather hard and dry. If I had just sculpted it into that shape, it may have sagged on me. That's why I went a little bigger and carved back. Behind, you can't see in this photo, but behind you can stick your hand in and attach and detach all of the plumbing, right? So it's not, all of the plumbing joints are exposed and you can replace them. We drilled the hole for the faucet after the fact. And then it just has a clay plaster on top. And the clay plaster is buffed smooth. And then I took the sink, just the sink portion, and I poured a stand oil, which is a really high quality linseed oil that's been heated for a period of time. And it sort of pre-polymerizes. And then I put the linseed oil in the sink, filled it, and let the linseed oil sink in to the clay until it was completely saturated, and then pulled all of the linseed oil out. And then when the linseed oil reacts with oxygen in the air, it creates a polymer, right? And so it's like, it's almost like epoxy, but it's made out of an oil. And that hardens the inside of the sink and it lets it hold water. So you can plug the sink, fill it up with water, and the water doesn't go back into the clay. So the clay never gets re-wet. It's just a sink. And this was, again, it was a situation where it was hard to find a sink that would fit in this little spot. So we're like, okay, let's make one, right? So if you're working with a material that is inherently as soon as you touch it, you want to make something, you want to play, you want to sculpt, you want to form it. If the material asks for that, when you're building, inherently that's what's going to happen, right? You're going to sculpt things, and it could just be a bench. It could be just your walls are beautiful. It could be you make a sink, right? Sky is kind of the limit here. And then there's just whimsy, right? So I have just some photos of some little niches that have happened over time. Some of these I did, some of these I didn't do. So this was, for example, someone came to a workshop, began the workshop with the sentence, "I'm not creative," and left the workshop with this behind them, right? And so again, it draws it out of you. You don't really have a choice in the matter. You're gonna make something beautiful, right? You know, and a niche can be a niche, or a niche can be a turtle. You know, it's sort of like whatever you want to do. Sky is absolutely the limit. This is just, I love this. This is a close-up of that mirror with a lotus mirror. Each one of the petals is a little shelf. So tiny, they're tiny, maybe, I don't know, between 5 and 10 centimeters max. And so there's little things in each of the little petals, which, yeah. You know, and then your wall can start to look like art if you want, right? While also being energy efficient, while also creating comfort, while also reducing humidity in your space or regulating humidity in your space, right? And I think there's this thing that because it's clay from the ground, it's dirt, right? It's dirt from the ground that has this property of being able to change. You can add water to it and make something completely different than what you started with. When it's wet, it's malleable. When it dries, it's nice and hard. It's intuitive. Again, like every human can grab clay and just play, right? There's no rules, just play with it. Your body knows what to do. And then it's also a thermal mass. So it also can store heat energy or coolness. And it's also regulating humidity, right? But because inherently it's this thing from the ground, it's intuitive, it's simple. There's always more to learn. So I've been doing this for 25 years. I learn something every single time I pick up clay. I learn something about clay every time. So you're successful from the beginning, but there's always somewhere else to take it, right? So it's this never-ending outlet for curiosity and experimentation. It's kid-friendly, right? And so there's this sort of communal aspect that clay it offers that other construction, sort of conventional construction techniques don't embody. And natural building and specifically clay construction absolutely embodies that. So, and then this is what I always leave people with, is just go out there and be the change you want to see, because that's the way we make the bigger changes, is all the little changes of all the people. So that's all.
Great.
Thank you.